The meeting will come to order. This is the City Council Finance Committee, the meeting remotely as allowed by governors and the state legislature. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. We'll start with approval of past meeting minutes. I want to thank Councilor Coniff for providing us with 5 minutes, which are being, which I would like to do, and I'm going to do them one day at a time. So I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of May 13th, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion for May 13th. Any discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Coniff?
Aye.
Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 17th?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of May 17th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Coniff?
Aye.
Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
And Councilor Riss says aye. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 20th, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of May 20th. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Coniff?
Aye.
Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 26th?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and second for May 26th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Coniff?
Aye.
Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. Finally, we have a motion. May I have a motion for the minutes of June 15th?
So move.
Yeah, second.
We have a motion and a second for June 15th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Coniff?
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
The mayor isn't here yet. I expect her.
Yes, she
Yes,
is.
she's here.
She's here.
Mayor LaChapelle, do you have anything other than what's on the agenda for this evening?
No.
Thank you. Public speak. Anyone here to speak to anything that's not on the agenda this evening? If you do, please use the raise your hand feature under the reactions button. Seeing none, I'm going to move right into business. I'm going to start with the supplemental appropriations, which are scheduled for a August 4th, 2021 public hearing. Who is here to speak for the Valley CDC? PJ. Okay, why don't you turn your, I'm going to share the screen, PJ,
Okay.
with the appropriate document that's up. Everybody see this?
Yeah, could I just ask PJ for the minutes, what your last name is?
Sure. I'm Peter Jessup. It's Jessop, and I'm the interim executive director at Valley Community Development Corporation. I'm sitting in today for Laura Baker, who would ordinarily be here, but she's on vacation.
I understand that Jane has retired or moved on.
Jane has moved on, and I'm the new interim ED.
Okay, great. Well, she presented the last time, and I just want to tell the other councilors that the Community Preservation Committee approved this 8-0. And I know the Councilor McCoy, who was unable to make that meeting because he was a last-minute addition to the committee, also felt very strongly about this. And to just say it bluntly, as a city councilor and a member of the CPA, where affordable housing is huge in that what we want to do, I am thrilled that this is being presented. So I have on the screen the application narrative, and I just want you to do a little bit, and I'll move forward to any part of this, and I'll go over the budget with the counselors at the end of what is the intent of Valley CDC so that you can explain it to the other counselors, PJ. I'm starting with the characteristics and everything that you're going to try and do.
Great. So I'll be brief, but I would say that the application is essentially to cover pre-development costs on at least 4 potential sites in Easthampton. And I think we want to make sure we differentiate this from a sort of a general planning approach to affordable housing. This is intended to do actual feasibility studies and to analyze sites for their suitability for development. We've been fairly detailed in our narrative, I think, as to what we would do to make that happen. And our budget includes some Valley community development staff time, as well as money for consultants to do such things, for example, as preliminary site plans, surveys, architecture, potentially some preliminary architectural drawings, perhaps site borings might be required, perhaps historical consultants might need to analyze a particular site. But it's really to be able to move towards the possibility of identifying one or two or more sites that would be feasible financially at the scale that we would want to do for developing perhaps a minimum of 30 units, and so that we could then move to the point where we could begin to develop the actual plans for that site, including financial feasibility, and begin to see how those sites could be funded to create affordable housing on those sites.
Just to be clear, Valley CDC would be the primary developer of these sites once you did, and you would fund them yourselves or find funding yourselves.
Yes, that would be our very most fervent hope. It's not our intent. It's not our intent to do all this pre-development work and then leave them to someone else. We have a track record, as you know, already in Easthampton, and it would be our intent to to continue on to develop these sites ourselves.
And I want to point out that in the narrative, they have used the city's housing production plan to develop, to look at some of the private sites, but they're also looking at the old schools as a possibility. And what I like about that personally is that they will study these, and you correct me if I'm wrong, PJ, but when we talked about them at the CPA committee, the old schools, you will look at them to see if they are economically and architecturally feasible for affordable housing. And this will be done concurrently with, I know there's a surplus group that's trying to look at what the reuse of these buildings would be. And that would be concurrent. And what's good about that is when you analyze them, for me, it's going to tell the entire city as well as the council whether or not building affordable housing on these old buildings is economically feasible, as well as will give us the kind of units we want, 30 to 50 units. So that was important to me.
Yeah, I think Dan's absolutely right. It's our definite intent to, it's our intent to include those buildings in our analysis. And I think that part of the value that we bring to that is our deep understanding and knowledge about how to do this kind of feasibility analysis with respect to affordable housing. So that will give you additional information about these school sites that you may not get from other groups that are analyzing them in a different kind of way. So whether or not they get developed into affordable housing or not, I think that doing the feasibility analysis on those school buildings will be of significant value to the town, and it is our intent, and we've detailed that in the narrative that we will do that.
I don't have anything else to say except that that's exciting, and I know there's people here from the from the Housing Partnership as well. I'm just going to ask the counselors if, given the narrative, and I'm sure you've studied it, if either Peg or Omar, if you have any questions for PJ, and I'm going to move to the budget while you do that.
I have a question, and it may very well be within the narrative here, but so PJ, you evaluate, you come up with a solution, you find various properties and sites, and you land on them in terms of these would be feasible for additional development for affordable housing. And that's what the $58,000 would get us to that point. And then from that point to making them actually be habitable, is that something that the Valley CDC takes on, or do you then have to get a developer?
I know, absolutely. That is our role. We've done, I don't know, maybe 300 units of affordable housing, and we have a very, very competent staff to do that development work, and we would undertake that ourselves to be the developer for a project once we've identified what it has to be. Also for us, it has to be probably the best site. It doesn't have to necessarily have to be the only site, but we would want to pick the site that had the best chance of success. But we would be the developer. Yes, Peg, that's correct.
Okay. And one more question, and then Omar, you can go. So then does the city, and I know the calculus on this is a little more complicated, but does the city then, so we've arrived at a site,
Yep.
You're going to be the developer. Does the city have to put forth another amount of money for the development? And then is it matched by the state?
Well,
Will that work? And if you can do it in under an hour, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We hope the city will put up 100% of the necessary funds. These kinds
Are you
of
serious?
these projects typically have anywhere from 7 to 10 funding sources.
He wasn't.
Include low-income housing tax credits. They could include soft second mortgages. There's a lot of funding sources for this kind of thing. Typically, one of those is Community Preservation Act funds in some amount, but there's no requirement there, and this doesn't obligate the city. This particular proposal doesn't obligate the city to do anything. Sometimes municipalities have disposed of city-owned property to us as part of the deal, but that's all down the line. We hope projects are always stronger when the city is participating financially in them. The other sources and the other lending sources like to see civic support for the projects through the use of tax dollars, but the amounts that municipalities put in tend to pale in comparison to the amounts of money that are needed for these projects. But yes, we would expect that the city would be a participant in the funding sources, but not anywhere near a major player.
Okay.
And
Thank
that's
you.
usually the CPA. Peg. CPA has funded. I think we put. I don't remember the money for Parsons Street, for instance. There was a contribution from the CPA.
Okay.
I'm putting up here the timeline. So this is an 18-month kind of project timeline. Omar, I'm sorry, I should have let you ask questions on any of this narrative.
I don't have any because Peg already covered my questions. Usually it's like that. No, she always read my head, I guess. But I want to make a comment. I think this is amazing for our community. We need this type of project. I've been in a few projects like the Parsons apartment. I think those apartments are great. And I'm really happy that you guys are doing this.
This is the budget for the counselors. I'm sure you saw it. $58,000 from CPA and in-kind work, or the value of in-kind work for the Valley CDC. I'm going to stop the share and see if we want comments from the John or Brad, if you guys want to make any comments on this. John?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jana Tatro from the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Brad Riley is also here. Obviously, we're very excited about this proposal. Laura did attend the Housing Partnership meeting back in May and presented to us, and we wrote a letter of support for the CPA application. So it really dovetails really nicely with the housing production plan. This is exactly the kind of thing that we, want to see happen from the housing production plan, is for to start looking at sites. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the city to work with Valley CDC in this way. So, we hope that the city council supports it.
Anybody else want to comment on it? Okay, this counselor wants to say that I'm hopeful that this eventually comes to fruition. I was pleased to support Parsons Street and the other projects that Valley CDC has done, and they are an incredible organization, and they organized funding for that project, for instance, quite well. The other thing about it is, as I said before, I'm thrilled that we will get probably even before the buildings become surplus, an idea if those buildings could be affordable housing. That's very important to me because I want them to be affordable housing. They're perfectly suited. In any case, if there's no further comment, I'll take a motion to approve $58,083 to be appropriated from the CPA Reserve for Affordable Housing to the Valley CDC Housing Development Assessment Account.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the $58,000 appropriation for the Valley CDC project. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Councilor Coniff,
Aye.
Councilor Gomez,
Aye.
Councilor Rich says aye. I'm sorry that other councilors aren't here, but all of you that are involved, someday I'm going to pronounce your name right, and PJ and Jamie, please come, Brad, to the August 4th public hearing in which this will be presented to the full council. I thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank the council for considering this. I appreciate it. I will relay the vote to Laura when she's back from vacation. And I'm assuming that it's acceptable for me to leave the meeting at this point, Dan?
Absolutely. In fact, anybody involved with that could, but you're welcome to stay. We're talking about historic.
Thank you. It's not that I'm not interested in the finances of Easthampton, but I will say thank you again, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, PJ.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, the next one is the $15,000 from historic preservation from Hampshire Hamden Canal Historic Survey. I noticed that John Brunner's here from the CPA committee, and he was eloquent in presenting it at the CPA. The CPA approved it. And I'll just let you talk about it so that you don't have to correct me, John.
Thanks for the opportunity, Dan. I appreciate everybody's time and attention. This is an opportunity that would not arise again, in that one of the most unique features of why we're asking at this time is that other communities like Northampton are participating in this jointly. So this is a chance for us to get in on the group effort of mapping the canal. And I'm assuming folks are familiar with the Hampshire Canal, which transported goods, was short-lived, but a fundamental part of the economy of Western Massachusetts and the area. And we do have, for example, Southampton is, they have the Lockville Historic District, which we would be connecting with as part of this. And I think it's a really good opportunity. It gives us information that can be used later on for other things. I would note, I was impressed when I went and saw a presentation, Farmington, Plainville, they have made trails and parks out of existing portions of the canal. So there is potential for greenways and future uses. But the first step would be to document and map what we have and make note of things where they are and that business, which is what we're requesting the money for.
So this is a joint study being done with how many communities again, John? I think it's like 7, 6?
I think 7 off the top of my head. Don't hold me to it, but I believe 7.
I think Shannon has an answer.
It's 6. It's Southwick. I have to always do it in order. Southwick, Westfield, Russell, Southampton, Easthampton, Northampton. Did I say all 6? Yes, and they've been working on this for a year and a half at this point with PVPC.
And Shannon, can you explain PVPC's interest in this?
Sure. Well, I'm Shannon Walsh. I'm the Historic Preservation Planner for PVPC since 2017. For those of you I haven't met, thank you for allowing me to come tonight and talk about this project. I've been talking with different municipalities about this for years, especially Southwick, because they have a mitigation fund due to a cellular tower that was put in many years ago that could only be used to document the canal. And the challenge is through Mass Historic, they would only allow them to document it if all 6 municipalities that the canal ran through participated. So we are at this point now through district local technical assistance funding, which all 6 municipalities applied for and received in early 2020, that and it also applied again, and we've continued it to help get this over the finish line. We've been working, Jamie has been attending these meetings, and Mike from the Historical Commission and representatives from all 6 municipalities to get this to the point of an RFP so we can hire a consultant to do this documentation the way that Mass Historic will accept it.
Any questions from the council?
Yes. And I claim ignorance because I'm not from around here originally. So I don't have a full understanding of where this canal goes and all of that, but I appreciate the fact that we need to get it documented and get the historical significance mapped out so that we can move forward, I would imagine, with improvements and greenways and all of the other things. And this is, would this be characterized as like a first step to see what we're dealing with? Like when you guys say mapping, maybe you could just kind of tell me what that means.
Who wants to answer? Jamie.
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
So I think it originally started in New Haven, Connecticut, and goes all the way up to Northampton. It has a fascinating history, which is not very well known. But basically, the Connecticut portion is on the National Register of Historic Places, and the the Massachusetts portion is possibly eligible for listing. We know approximately where it is. A lot of the old maps of it were not as precise as we might want them under today's standards. We're trying to understand where this goes on private property or public property, to understand what is existing, what's been bulldozed over. There were aqueducts that crossed the canal over the Manhan River, which is no longer in place. There are remnants of the canal along West Street, along the Manhan River. The bridge over one of the brooks that crosses West Street is actually built on the canal bed. So we have all these like remnant places, and we just like to know what's left and what we need to preserve. So from a city perspective, when this goes through one of the proposed locations, the driving range behind the Tasty Top has some of the canal bed there. Recently, we had a proposal for a cannabis company that was going to come into that location. And if we knew exactly, we could have some sort of condition that from the special permit process that would protect that resource or provide historical narrative, something that would bring attention to it. So it's not necessarily that this is a first step to creating a greenway, but it is the first step in just trying to understand what we have, where it is, who owns it, and how we can best preserve it going forward.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. That was excellent. Omar, anything?
No, I think Jamie covered my my question. I'm going to ask you why it's so important for the community to do this, and I think she can answer it. So I'm really happy with what she said before.
I do want to ask, if I could, Shannon, one more time. I'm taking minutes. Northampton, Southampton, Southwick, Easthampton, and two more?
Southwick, Westfield, Russell, Southampton, Easthampton, Northampton.
You have to say them in the order you have them memorized.
I do. And Russell's like a left turn. But this canal was constructed by hand in the 1800s. It's amazing. And there really are there's parts of it that are gone. There's parts of it that became the railroad, which is what did the canal in. And then there's parts of it that are actually still there. Some have water in it down in Southwick along the rail trail there. Some are just dry beds. And we know this because, and Jamie also, some of us have walked it. And I'll just say real quick about the mapping, the opportunity, like Jamie said, to understand where it is, to use this as a planning tool is really amazing, because in the 1800s, they put surveyors' information in the newspaper to advertise that the canal was going to be put in. And historian Carl Walter, who some of you might be familiar with, he painstakingly went through all of the papers to do this map that he created for the Northampton Historical Society. And more recently, the Northampton GIS coordinator, James Thompson, took his map, did an overlay on existing mapping. Some of it, topography changed over time, but also because of the flood in the 50s. But we have this starting point, and we've also gone out with our phones and gotten geolocational information for James to straighten out the map. But this is what we can give the consultant to use to start with to really complete the mapping piece. So we're excited about that piece of it.
Well, part of Community Preservation Act is to preserve history. And we don't have as much history preserved as I'd like in Easthampton. And I have to be very honest, I am showing my ignorance. I didn't know we had a canal. So that's also a very big part of this project, is educating our community to the very incredible industrial history of our community. Because the canal was an industrial element. It allowed transportation of goods and probably people from New Haven all the way up Northampton. I forget how far it went, but the CPA committee was very in favor of it, 8-0. So. Anything else from anyone?
I just want to share real quick that part of this district local technical assistance funding is working with Carl Walter to try to revisit his 5 canal talks that he did, including Russell and Westfield. So Jamie's part of that group. We're trying to source locations. We're working with the community access television in the different municipalities. So we hope to be, as you mentioned, Dan, as part of this outreach, to be able to share this history with our public, which will be also a great archival resource going forward.
Anything else? Then I'd like a motion to approve $15,000 from the CPA Reserve for Historic Preservation account to be appropriated to the Hampshire-Hamden Canal Historical Survey for $15,000.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Coniff? You said aye,
muted.
you're muted, but I
Aye.
saw your mouth move, and I'll say aye. Thank you very much. That's been approved by the Finance Committee. Both of you, I suggest John, and well, of course you, Jamie, and Shannon, come to the August 4th public hearing for the full council.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Will
very
do.
much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks.
So now, Mayor LaChapelle, you have a presentation, and I want to make your presenter a co-host. Could you inform me who that is?
John Bonavist.
John, I'm making you a co-host, which allows you to present.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And
You
John,
need to
can
turn
you
on
tell
your
us where
video,
you're
John.
from?
Yeah, I attempting the video. I don't know. We had a little challenge on the intro. See if it clicks on. There we go.
There you go.
There you go. Could you also state your name for the record, and anybody who speaks to this, please state your name for the record.
Absolutely. I'm John Bonavist. I am a project manager development with Honeywell. We've been working with the mayor and team on an energy savings performance contract. And first, I'd like to say thank you, Dan, and the committee for having us here. Thank you, Mayor, as well. And wanted to quickly introduce also from my team, Mike Janos, who is on screen now. Mike is our senior engineer and project developer. And
Hello.
Evening, Mike. And along with him, Alex Orton is our project manager as well, who's been leading the charge for us here in Easthampton.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Paul. So why don't you share the screen? And I just want to say the Council Finance Committee takes action on appropriations and transfers, et cetera. We will not be taking any action. This is just to be informed. And I know the mayor will be putting forth financial requests in the future. So tonight, this is mostly informative. And if you can do it in a bullet point kind of way, but anything that's essential, of course, say, present it, please.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks again. So we'll jump into the agenda. We're going to walk through the project overview, quickly touch upon the goals and the scope and get into the numbers itself, which I think will be very helpful and illustrative to understand both the value, the cost, the economics, and all relative items. And then following that, then we'll certainly field questions. I wanted to share this real quickly just to illustrate basically the view, a macro view of what many communities are faced with. And I think, this is applicable to Easthampton as far as the pandemic impact, the challenges within responding from indoor air quality, from all the typical items that could be needing replacement, capital needs, trying to fund those in an environment of escalating costs, and clearly trying to maintain the tax base, not overburden, and keep things the status quo. So this takes into account those measures as well as sustainability and energy focused on renewables and solar, and brings together a nice value proposition for the community. I'll run through quickly in a few moments basically the essence of what an energy savings performance contract is. We'll get into why Easthampton is actually pursuing this, a scheduled timeline, and which actual buildings we're targeting within the city, and how this procurement is possible through Massachusetts state law. So the Energy Savings Performance Contract, as I just mentioned, is a procurement vehicle from Mass General Law within the Department of Energy Resources. And ultimately, it allows a community to seek an energy service company or an ESCO, such as Honeywell or our peers, and form an agreement to work together to hone a customized scope of all building needs. It could be typical capital improvements, energy savings items, again, energy production in terms of solar or other endeavors. And it's a vehicle that provides financing as well as a turnkey project management approach, and lets things get done comprehensively, completely, with one point of accountability in a firm fixed price environment. And the essence of it is all backed upon a performance guarantee. And what that means to Easthampton is, again, based upon the critical response of the pandemic and what that means to a combination of trying to improve indoor air quality from cleansing the air and particulate, as well as having systems that are functioning properly from a mechanical point of view. It looks into all those measures to how that can happen, what needs to be upgraded, how and how quickly that can come to bear to obviously provide safety for all occupants. We've looked into several facility infrastructure improvements, which we will go through in detail and provide context for. This actual project also looks into the typical mechanical and other building items that can be deferred, where you can have end-of-life equipment. You can have challenges where you have continuous breakdowns and repairs and items that are costly, and by the same time, they're not operating effectively or efficiently. Therefore, they're actually costing more money, using more energy, and they're hard to fund. So this is a way to get the capital renewal type items financed and brought forward, as well as to drive other positive financial impacts to help carry and offset some of the costs within these projects. Easthampton is very focused, and I know the mayor is quite focused on adding new solar and improving things from a sustainability and renewables standpoint, and we've taken that into consideration as well. We'll discuss that. And the essence of this, as I mentioned, is tied to a performance guarantee, of which in this case Honeywell stands in front of Easthampton and would guarantee the energy savings in the project as well as the solar production that we'll discuss. The procurement method this RFQ followed is under the Mass Department of Energy Resources, MGL Chapter 25A, Section 11I in specific. And Michael Owens from your procurement office has led the charge. And just to give a brief timeline, the city decided to go forth with this back last fall, went through all the right diligence steps, including, even though it was a pandemic, did a great job of having the pre-submission conference and facility tour and exercise, social distancing, and all the pandemic guidelines. It was a very well-attended conference by many energy service companies, not just Honeywell. A lot of our peers were there as well, and responses were due, and the city went through and selected their interview candidates, and for us, thankfully, they selected us at the beginning of 2021. The buildings that are specific and focused within this project that we'll be discussing are listed in front of you. I wanted to comment, it's when we go through the buildings like this, it's about trying to find opportunity that's going to have value. Energy savings, absolutely. So within the DOER context, our goal is to find as much energy savings as possible. But when we look at a building, in particular, the high school stands out. Knowing that it was newly constructed in 2013, it's going to have less need than your other buildings. And when we went through there, there's obvious items that we would skip over because they're functioning just fine, and Larry Carnes is maintaining the building very well. And even in terms of what we do from a building control standpoint, the existing controls are functioning well and fine, so we would not look to replace any of those. And it's just, again, about adding value where it's needed and not trying to just seek opportunity to deploy a lot of products. Jumping into the timeline summary, we're on target, assuming that things continue forward with the city, that we would execute a contract likely the latter part of September, and that would mean construction starting in October. About a 12-month schedule of construction build out, and we would certainly be focused to prioritize the beginning of the project tied around indoor air quality improvements, things that would, again, would help to clean air, that would help with particulate and whatnot in a response to the pandemic, as well as tying other opportunities into things that are more seasonally impacted. So the next cooling season, which we'll speak of a bit as we get into the details, but to make sure things are up and running in time to satisfy those needs as the calendar flips. The project goals, which are really important here, and I would say really stemming from the pandemic impact of really kicking this more into an urgent project or a very well-timed project as we go through the buildings. And again, the combination of wanting to improve them from an indoor air quality perspective, from a healthy buildings perspective, including a dashboard that would have metrics and readouts of certain indoor air quality particulates and temperature, relative humidity, et cetera. And then also get into how can we help to make your buildings more effective, more efficient, less operationally intensive, reduce energy, but also get into the deferred maintenance catalog. And how can we bring forward new equipment that's needed that might be challenging to fund any year, and get those within a program that works. Following that with adding more solar, traffic sustainability, and reducing the amount of electricity dependent that Easthampton is currently under. So that's really all things coming together, and it's a balanced program of satisfying each of those measures. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, our senior engineer, to walk through these ECMs, or energy conservation measures, which are the actual scopes per building.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Janos with Honeywell. I'm lead engineer on this project, like John mentioned. So I'm just going to give a high-level overview of the energy conservation measures, or ECMs, as they're shown in the slide here. If there's any questions, please feel free to interrupt. I don't want to go too deep and bore everybody, but if there's any questions, please let me know. So the first one on the list is one of the measures at the public safety building. This, like John mentioned, it's a chiller replacement, so it's more capital intensive. That piece of machinery it's been pretty problematic, and it's on its last leg, so that's really an urgent need that would need to be replaced. Next, we get into the building management system, which are the controls, the temperature controls and scheduling of equipment within buildings. And then along with that, a healthy buildings upgrade that would incorporate UV lighting to help improve indoor air quality, along with some space sensors that feed back to a dashboard that allows everybody to check in, or people with access to check in and see how the buildings are performing relative to the baseline, and make sure everything, the conditions for the occupants inside are within the guidelines. Demand control ventilation, that's a controls measure that kind of optimizes the ventilation for the facility. The next one is an air handling unit replacement at the municipal building. This is another very capital intensive project. There's a lot of mixing boxes out there currently, which is just the air distribution throughout the building for the heating and the cooling. and they're all pretty much close to the end of their useful life. So we would be looking to replace those, as well as the condensing unit, which handles the cooling for the building. The kitchen hood controls at the high school, that's a way to optimize your exhaust within the kitchen. Keeps the occupants from overheating, and you don't run the hood nonstop when you don't need to. Next item is destratification fans with UV lighting incorporated into them. This is kind of twofold. It goes with the energy savings from destratifying the hot air that rises up to the ceiling, just pushes it down to the floor where the people actually are. And then also the UV lighting to remove some of the contaminants that are circulating through the air. Pretty standard to all ESCO projects. LED lighting upgrade and controls were applicable. That's kind of like a low-hanging fruit measure that's provides some savings and has a relatively good payback. Building envelope improvements are, you can think of that as like the shell of the building itself. And this would be like sealing any cracks, weather stripping, items like that. Insulation would fall into building envelope improvements. The variable frequency drive that's used to control motor speed. And that ties right back into the previous measure with the air handling unit replacement. Those two go hand in hand. Walk-in freezer controls just optimize refrigeration operation, and that's within high school. And one of the biggest measures is the solar systems. And we also have an electric vehicle charging stations included in there as well. And that includes roof mount, carport, and also ground mount systems. And then finally, a software program, computer power management, that will optimize how computers operate. So when they're not in use, they can not power off, but power down, and to just save energy. And that's just a software application. So that is, in a very brief nutshell, an overview of the scope. Any questions?
Is this when you want us to ask questions, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, I think. Thanks, Dan. I think we'll go through the deck and then open up to all questions. That's
okay. All right. I might want to come back to this page, so just
sure.
So you know.
Certainly. Thank you, Mike. So what Mike just described brings us to an estimate of $6.16 million of a total project cost. On top of that, there is what's called an owner control contingency. It's a 5% estimate of that number, which would be for any unforeseen conditions as we get into the actual project. And that $308,000 and change is controlled by the city and only used if need be. It's not given to Honeywell in advance. So that would bring the total bonding number up to the 6.475. It's obviously listed there at the bottom. So we wanted to walk through the project details in a little bit closer here as we look at total costs. Columns are now added in with rebates, which this next column is a one-time, which is a negotiation with Eversource, and it's received by the city directly within the first year of the project. So to get to a net cost, and then the actual total annual energy cost savings that each of these measures will be driving on, again, on an annual basis, summing to just under $119,000 a year. And then to the right of that is the annual solar incentive. You'll see that is $70,803, and I have an asterisk there because that is actually on an annual basis going to slightly decline due to solar panel, what's called degradation, or basically the effectiveness of the solar panel. Every year it loses, say, a touch of the production, so that would then mathematically just decline with the production output times any incentive. The average of 20 years I've noted below is 67,538. So it doesn't decline obviously, tremendously, but I wanted to just show that in transparency as well. And off to the right would be operational savings that you would be avoiding as well. So the chiller replacement and the air handling unit in a 50 Payson. I've looked through the invoices with Greg Nuttleman, so those are items that every year you're spending over those amounts to have the service come out because there's no air conditioning, because something is tripping, is not working, getting things up and running, kind of maintaining, kind of end of life system. So that those and the other few items mixed in come to $11,500 that you would be avoiding on an annual basis. Before I change slides, though, I wanted to point out, if we look at, say, the first 5 of these or so, with the chiller replacement at a cost of $202,000 net, with annual energy savings of, look, it's only $584, right? And the next line as well, over $1.2 million of cost, and the energy savings is $3,495. As I go on, the reason why I'm calling those out is these type of programs and projects typically are carried with more energy savings, but they're still able to utilize the 20-year amortization within the project to pull these capital items out of what would typically be in a 5-year CIP or capital budget and get that capital renewal financed now, have it part of the project and benefit from it today, and not have to look at it on an emergency basis repair or continue to invest in an end-of-life system that's inefficient and ineffective. So that's why we're leaving these type of items in and helping the city to have a capital renewal plan within the energy savings project. I'll show a cash flow in a moment, but just wanted to provide the project summary and the assumptions here so we can see them clearly. We just went through the actual cost of the project, estimated at 6.1 and change, and we discussed the contingency as well, getting to a total bonding number of 6,475. This cash flow will show nothing up front from the city at all, so we'll see how the numbers flow. Utility rebate that I mentioned, it's a 1-year only upfront from Eversource, is estimated at $42,000 and change. And we're utilizing an inflation rate of 3% against a cost of funds on a bond at 2% over a 20-year term. And the city will be making equal payments once a year. Now, I'll walk you through the cash flow, starting from the top, and just to point it out, just to be able to see it more clearly, kind of hidden down the columns in between the 5-year interval, so it flows nicer on the page. But the financed amount of the full bonding amount, so just to back up for a second, the capital is running forward. The payments are off the 6,475,239. For an annual debt service payment of $377,147. There's also the M&V component, means measurement and verification, which is the performance guarantee that Honeywell has, which ensures the energy savings contracted is met. And if there's a shortfall in that savings, Honeywell has to write a check back to Easthampton and also endeavor to modify that to fix any type of a miss. And I should point out quickly, while we're pretty aggressive in the amount of savings that we can bring to bear, there are times for sure that we do miss those payments and make our customers whole. In fact, just looking at our Honeywell energy program, kind of historically over $8.5 billion of projects, we have paid out over $48.3 million. So it's less than 1%, but still at $48 million, it's a lot of money. So it's basically just, I think, says that we try to drive as much savings as possible, and in the areas where things do go wrong, we make them right, and we also keep our customers whole. So the total cost then starts in year 1 at $391,000 and flows forward. The next area of items under project revenue sources are starting with the actual energy savings that this project will drive. And that first line does not include solar, to keep things easier to understand, at $31,000 and change. The operational cost avoidance I just went through on the prior page at $11,500. And you saw the solar numbers, but just to call them out, there is an energy component. So the solar you're producing, thus not needing the Eversource electricity, will save you $87,000 in change in the first year. And the actual solar incentive from the Mass Smart program starts at $70,803. And I mentioned the degradation, so you'll see that's the only line that's declining in the revenue stream. So total revenues of $201,281 that flow forward. And your annual cash flow, when you compare that against your payments, leaves a negative cash flow in year 1 of $190,269. So that would be typically where you say, well, I would expect to have more energy savings. And that's where this project really starts to look into those heavier capital items, like we mentioned with the chiller and with the VAV system at City Hall, and even a portion of the solar. There's a solar canopy as well within the portfolio. So the second section, called contribution cost, starts with the capital renewal items, and I have a cleaner break on the next page, so I'll jump to that momentarily with the detail. But the capital cost avoidance of $141,000. There's a piece of the solar portfolio as well that would be added to that for a total of $191,000 and change. That would represent capital cost avoidance or capital renewal to plan for that would be in the city's budget going forward to offset the negative cash flow that you see there. So when we bring all things together, that would then have a net positive cash flow in year one of the $1,629. And as the program flows forward through its full 20 years, it arrived at the bottom numbers of $764,000 of positive cash flow. I'll jump to now the next slide, which really shows the detail under that capital contribution. So the top section is just a repeat of what we just saw on the former slide. I'll just go back for a second. So this bottom contribution cost piece is just carried over. So it's just, they're all the same numbers, ending in the 764, 769 of positive cash flow on the bottom line. And then I break out the contribution detail. So these specific measures, starting with the chiller replacement in the middle of the screen and flowing down, they sum to $2,300,000 and change of total cost. And again, you see the positive cash flows next to them, which are the rebates. It's getting to a net cost, and then the energy savings component of it and the operational savings. But that in and of itself would represent a large piece of the negative cash flow. So on an annual basis, at the 2% cost of capital, the city can still have all those measures in year one of this project at an annual cost of $141,311, which is the yellow component, the yellow cells at the bottom of that table. And just off to the right, there's a few justification items kind of tied to each of these measures of, why would this, from you're not the best economically performing measures, why would they still be considered? And in response to the pandemic and the indoor air quality improvements that they help with, as well as having mechanical systems that work more properly and allow for controls and controllability of your heating and air conditioning and whatnot. There's reasons why these are valid and why they should be considered. And again, taking them into account, you would have this amount to budget for. Shifting the same thought to the bottom of the table within the solar piece, when we look at the full solar system that we're bringing to bear, which Mike had mentioned, there's three different components of it. One would be rooftop solar at 50 Payson. Another would be a large carport or canopy at the public safety building. There'll be electric vehicle charging station as well as public safety, and then ground mount solar at the wastewater treatment plant. So those total projects sum to the 3,369,318 of total cost, which flows across, and you see the incentives that are listed there. Again, I footnote the annual solar incentive on the average down below so that we understand it's not $70,000 each year. But that, with the canopy expense, brings the payback over 20 years for those. So we looking at the estimate between the annual financing for that full solar project, how much the incentives would carry at the 155,469, and then what the shortfall is, or the annual cost, which is 50,588. So that in the same thought process of still being able to bring the solar forward and adding all the new solar that we're discussing, factoring that in with the above annual cost would arrive at a total annual contribution of $191,898, and that's fixed at a 20-year term.
Are you done there?
That's the last financial slide, but we have a few more slides to get through, and then maybe we'll take all questions. Is that okay, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great, thanks. So In terms of how this can come together, looking at a source of funds, and I'll gladly have your treasurer comment momentarily, but the funding strategy for this is based upon, again, the pandemic timeframe, the market conditions of where the cost of funds are, and what's best for the city from that standpoint. And then there are potential cost offsets that I list here that we've seen already in the utility rebate component, the energy savings on solar, as well as the solar cost avoidance and operational cost avoidance. And potentially there could be uses for stimulus funds as well. That it's at the city's discretion. But I'll bring Jen in maybe to comment about funding, please, Jen.
Yes. I just wanted to comment that right now the bond market, the rates on the bond market are extremely low, and that this is the time to get the cost of money where we want it to do projects like this. And I think kind of to speak to the last financial sheet that John had with the costs, the contribution costs.
Can you go back a slide for Jen, please?
Certainly.
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, and not to speak to the actual specific numbers, but I look at this as if we are doing this project now and doing bonding to pay for the project, these items that essentially we're going to need, the chiller, the HVAC here, are going to cost us that much more in 5 years, in 10 years, whenever they break and we need to do so. And then, of course, we're dealing with an emergency situation, which always costs more. So, that said, I just think I had a little bit of a, perplexity over this sheet, just because it's hard to look at it as contribution costs. But I think what it is we're detailing out that like they would be way more than this going forward if these things weren't included in this project and the money to pay for the project wasn't obtained at the rates that we can obtain it at now.
I just need to stop you a minute because I'm having a definition quandary in my head. Contribution cost, does that refer to what the city of Easthampton is contributing per year? Is that what that means?
That would be correct. That would have to be budgeted for.
Okay. So the total annual contribution of $191,898 is your estimate of the cost per year. But up above, you talk about a positive 1629, then it goes forward. And I just wanted to know, between the two of them, it sounds like, I probably have this wrong, that there's a positive aspect of this if you take into consideration savings, incentives, and everything else, that the overall cost of the project is compensated for by the savings that we're going to have, and including deferred maintenance, which is what Jen is referring to. Am I correct on that? Is that what that meant? The last slide you had, well, here, 1629?
Yeah, so Dan, you're definitely right. It's just a matter of, there's a lot of numbers here. So let me maybe go through it one more time. The red section is truly the annual payment by Easthampton. So look at year one, right, at 391,551. Everything that follows are actual cash inflows, right? Energy savings, operational cost avoidance, solar energy cost avoidance, the solar piece, that 201,281 are the savings things that I believe you're thinking of and touching upon. The challenge is that's just over 50% of the outflow or the payments, and therefore to still have all these measures incorporated, there needs to be a way to fund them, which is the contribution cost box. So to walk you down to the first yellow section in the middle of the screen after the savings, if you had a shortfall of $190,269, and then we had these budgeted items of the capital cost avoidance for the handful of measures plus the piece of the solar that needs to be picked up, and that total cost is $191,898, that added to the negative 190 equals a net positive cash flow of the $1,629. And then the cash flows are positive every year in accordance, which ends up growing to $764,769 after the full 20-year term.
John, I want you to finish your slides before I open it up to more questions. I have two things to say. One of that is these are estimates, of course, some of these. And secondly, we're just getting this tonight. I'm going to need some time to get into it and get some more educated questions, just so you know that. But why don't you finish your slide presentation? I don't know if Jen, if you have more to say, I'd like to finish it before I open it up to, well, I think the mayor probably has things to say, and then the councilors.
I would like to make a comment and some explanation after the PowerPoint is done.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to actually, Jen, I'm sorry, were you good, or did you want to comment further?
I'm good. I'm good. Sorry.
No. Thank you very much. So the last slide to touch on quickly, again, just more process oriented to just let those on the call who may be viewing this later understand that this has been a very diligent and a team effort between the Easthampton team of the mayor, Greg Nuttleman, Jen, Mike Owens as well, and having several meetings on a weekly basis to go through all the initial steps and all the way through where we are right now, putting together the process. And it's important, too, to note that this process follows very, very closely and clearly to the Department of Energy Resources guidelines of us providing back these three different measures. So the prelim energy audit, the draft technical audit report, and then what we just finished now in the optimized investment grade audit. So while these numbers, Dan, we speak in terms of estimate, we actually have, there's final numbers from a Honeywell perspective, which are in there, which we can talk to. I definitely respect the fact this is the first time you're getting it, and there's a lot to delve into. And we touched upon the type of improvements that we're faced with. So I think this is a good place to pause and open it up for questions.
Well, I'd like to have the mayor speak to it now, and then I have a few things to ask first. But Mayor, go for it.
Thank you. And thank you, John and Jen, as well as Mike, for the great presentation of something that clearly is very complicated, but urgent to the city. I had talked to ESCO companies and DOER, about 3 years ago, about what this sort of project could bring to Easthampton. And there were definitely savings, but with the priorities at that point, it didn't make sense to go forward. The pandemic really was the tipping point. When we started looking at air quality, we started looking at the equipment that kept our air quality just above acceptable in pre-pandemic, and then what it was not going to be able to do, and in fact could fail under the increasing pressure of post-pandemic. I would just note that the opening of City Hall on July 1st was not that the air quality is better, it's being cleaned, but that people are vaccinated, more people are vaccinated. So I wanted to dispel this idea that, well, things are fine. That said, looking very hard at the capital improvement items that we have in that plan and looking at the other costs we have before us, the opportunity to address not only renewable energy and increase that in our portfolio, but there is a very concrete savings to the city over 20 years of $2,379,900. If you calculate the annual savings of 118. So we're seeing long-term savings for the city, which quite honestly, I think those savings will be going up given the increasing cost of utilities, especially electricity in the Northeast, Massachusetts in particular. The cost of money right now is very low. And I think we all know that that's not going to stay that way. With the cost of money being low, and we were very conservative with our estimates of 2%, we did not want to assume the best and lowest rate. It is the time to make this kind of bonding commitment also because we have extra dollar resources that I hope we never have again, which is CARE Act, ARPA, and fingers crossed, FEMA, so as well as our cannabis account, where we can balance this kind of an investment all at once, as well as invest in the future of something more efficient. What we've put forward, and we started with the first list of things we could do total and maximize this program, it was $12 million. And the project update meetings that you see, the list of myself, Jen, Greg, and Michael, we looked through that to see what wasn't a priority, what made the most sense, what we could improve today, so when we have to take the next step or upgrade, we'd have a good foundation. I look at this as a two-part financial proposition. I look, one, at energy savings, and that is actually well documented throughout our community that they want to see that through our master plan, our housing production plan, our downtown strategy plan, as well as our ordinances around hybrid vehicles and energy savings. So I see this very in line with what the community has said for some time they'd like to see. On the other side, the other part of the project, if anybody asked me what the cost was of deferred maintenance, well, my first answer would be $109 million for our new school. And my second answer would be the numbers we're looking at here, the 191 per year. If you want to know what it costs to wait and let inflation as well as use deteriorate the base of a city, we've got two wonderful examples, and one we've taken care of with the school bonding, but the other, we have an opportunity right here to balance that with savings and environmental positive impact with solar. I'll wrap up because I want to make sure we have time, for questions, but a lot of other cities have done this, Worcester, Boston, and have had more savings. And I'll just go back to the savings in new energy sources here is mitigated by deferred maintenance. And we can get a jump on that and also help our capital improvement plan, other projects not included in this contract, but in our CIP, and reprioritize them to get at some other urgent needs in that plan. And also there are other departments in the city which have needs that have become urgent because of COVID. So at that, I would, I know that, and Jen, please correct me, and I think this will be I just want to get this out there because I know it'll be a question. When you're looking at this project and the financial assumptions that we have made as we've presented to you, we are looking at an increase on our base tax rate of 33 cents. Jen, did I get that straight?
Yes.
So that, I'm sorry, no, take that back, is $33 a year. $33 a year for your average house at a cost of $274. So that's what, I guess that's what really deferred maintenance costs is $33 a year. So that I'll leave it at that to just answer questions around the strategy, financial strategy. Money is cheap. We have extra money funds that we never anticipated having. We have the cannabis that can go to certainly some things in our budget and make others more affordable. And we can save money because we still have an amount to bond for the school project, and we can do this process once with these two different bonds and save money, and do things once rather than twice.
Okay.
Very much.
I have a couple. I want to ask the committee a major question. We're just receiving this evening. I'm assuming Councilor Gomez and Councilor Khan, if you haven't seen this prior to tonight. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to have another meeting in which we absorb all this and come back with questions?
I prefer
Because
that.
I would certainly feel comfortable doing that because there's a lot of information in here. I have general questions, but some of them have to do with how we're financing it. Some of them have to do with what we're buying. The other thing is, I really want to urge the council to come to these meetings, another meeting, and ask them to watch this. But I'd like your opinion on that.
I prefer that.
Councilor Khan?
Do we think, I feel like now that we have the number should formally be sent to us via the normal process of going to full council and then referring to committee, so that full transparency, so that the council is aware that we now have numbers, and that is something that we'll need to talk through.
Well, yeah, and we could do, my questions could happen at that meeting.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming the mayor's going to put this forward. I'm not going to make comment as, I like what it's doing, but I'd like to learn a lot more about it. And we could learn that stuff at the finance meeting in which we are actually deliberating a bond.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, Peg?
Yes. I would prefer to deliberate the numbers once they have been fully vetted through city council and referred to committee. Because I just, for transparency, I just think we need to do that. And I also have a lot of questions to both Honeywell and the mayor, and I would be more comfortable doing all of that in a more formalized handoff.
Plus, we have time to study this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would hope that this, with that in mind, I'm just going to do a couple of general questions. I think what I'd like to hear at that meeting in September, I'm assuming, because we're going to present this in August, or in August, whenever we have that finance meeting to talk about the bonding. I'd like to hear how the bonding might be paid for. I know we have to bond it like we did the high school, the entire amount, but I think looking at what you said before on a prior page, could you go back a page, Mike? Yeah, another one. Where did we have, I'm sorry, go forward where the bonding is maybe I've got the wrong page. You went to.
Oh, I see, 6.75.
At the bottom there.
No, I know, but there was another one in which we talked about, where you asked Jen to talk about it, stimulus money in there. There. I know that there's ESSER funds, there's other possible cost offsets. I'd like that brought out further as to how it balances bonding, in which we may not actually have to bond the entire amount, that kind of thing. So Jen, that's something that maybe you and the mayor can work out that's something that I'd like to see more detail on. Secondly, if I understand this entire project, there's two big things in it. One is HVAC and air quality, like even in the high school, to bring up HVAC, given the science we know about how air quality affects our health. That's a major component of this, as well as a major component, like half of it, is to bring in more solar into and that kind of renewables in. In fact, you talked about building a carport, I think, over public safety to put some solar panels like they did up at the co-op, and I think that's fantastic. Is that fair to say that those are the two primary things, Mayor? HVAC
yes.
improvements and the solar improvements?
Yes, it is.
All the other energy things and cost deferred maintenance things are important, but They seem to be the biggest thing.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
The solar, as well as deferred maintenance. To be honest, we should be replacing whole systems, and we can't afford it as a city. So we're taking that deferred maintenance and bringing it up to the highest standard that we can, so we can get software to fully measure and also get a longitudinal look at where we are with our systems. I also would just like to set the public record straight. I introduced the narrative for this project on June 16th to City Council and asked for it to be forwarded to Finance because of the detail of the information we gave you on that day. And I was asked to bring to this meeting a number of the project with that detail, as well as a bonding request that I put forward to the chair and president of the City Council. So I would not want this to be seen to going against normal patterns, nor me trying to be less than transparent by submitting what I was asked to this finance meeting. I am also not going to commit to any cost offsets, nor do I really want to discuss them, because what I need from council to go forward and figure out how we're using all this extra money is a simple vote if I can bond up to $6,475,239. So I have not gotten all of our ARPA money. I am waiting for clarification on cannabis, and we have a lot of other things to spend on, and that will be putting in and out. The push on this is that money is cheap, and we know we already have to bond. And we also know that our air quality is not sufficient, and I'm very worried about Delta variants or whatever comes our way. But, you know, the market conditions, this is a strategy. We want to leverage our bond rating. Our bond rating is the strongest it is right now because of the hard work, but also the larger economic profile of Western Mass, which is surely to go down post-pandemic. We can't control that larger economic profile. It's 40% of a bond rating, and we go back for a bond rating and we wait too long. We will surely not keep our AA+.
Well, first of all, when I was talking about offsets, I was responding to this page. So I think it's a fair question, but you should tell us what you can tell us. You don't have all the answers yet. Secondly, I think and I'll let Councilor Coniff respond to this, but what Councilor Coniff was speaking to is the normal process. We get a request for appropriations and bonding and everything that goes right to the council. So when we get that request in August, I assume you're going to put it forward. That's where the process becomes official, shall we say. This is exactly what we need, though, and I'm very appreciative of it, in the sense that we needed to see where you were with this, and the numbers are here, but we can't act because we haven't been given, the full council hasn't been given a number to act on. So all we can do is ask questions about it, and I just like to learn a little bit more about it before I ask questions at the next finance meeting. So I hope you understand that it's not about trying to put off voting on it. We can't. We don't have anything in front of the full council. The full council has to send it to us, and you're going to give us a number that we're going to vote on. It might be the 6,400,000 or whatever that is. So does that make sense, Mayor?
No, but it's your council, and you know, I asked if I could do it this way. It went to City Council. It was very clear it was a big project. I was asked to bring a number here. No point arguing it. I'll do whatever the council wants. This is very important, and I very purposely split the scope of the project physically with the number, hoping that folks would be able to, on the council, take a good look at that and then understand the benefit when they get the price tag of this over $6 million. But they're your rules. It's at your discretion. So I will respectfully do whatever you would like to. Would I then, if it comes back to city council, so basically, we are doing a first reading on the 7th?
We haven't done a first reading because there was no number presented to the full council. We can't, by rule and maybe by law, act for the full council. The full council can't, finance committee can't say we've got a bonding request and then we've approved it and the full council doesn't know anything about it. So that's all that's just the way it is. It always has been. Appropriation comes to the full council and we read it for the first time, then we discuss it. All of this is extremely valuable because it's a big request. But that's always been the process for a bond, for appropriations. It's the full council has to send it to committee. Peg, am I right with all this? I mean, can you comment? No, it is. And I think perhaps when we were initially doing this, our thought was, what number are you talking about, and bring that to finance. But I guess not really having any idea what we were talking about. This is way more complicated than my head thought it would be. And so I do have a lot of questions that I would like to put forth in perhaps another setting. Yes, we can't ask the full council to vote on something they've never seen. So that's what we will do next time, so we can put that through in August. And then, there'll be a public hearing in September. Potentially have a public hearing in September and vote on it first or second meeting in September. I think that's the timeline that it sounds like you were looking for, Mayor, looking at the timeline. For October? I mean, we'll get it done in September, I would think.
Negotiate a contract. I mean, if I had my way, I would have this go back to council in the second meeting of August. Except we're not having a second meeting. My point. These are important things.
So right now, in my opinion, we wait for that bonding request to come to the full council. An official request goes to finance, and that's when we go into this. I would like this presentation sent to the full council when you put the bonding request forward so that they all see it. I'm going to recommend to the full council that they watch this meeting because it was very well done. Councilor Gomez, do you have any comment? I'm skipping over you.
No, I do have a lot of questions, and I do read the narrative from June 16, and that didn't include any numbers. So there was a lot of numbers. It's a lot of information, and I would be irresponsible from me to make question now without going to the details of the report. I think I should. We should get this. We should get time to digest all the information and then coming back to make all these questions.
You can stop sharing the screen, John, for now. I saw Councilor Rothschild on the call. Do you have any questions, Councilor? Or comments? Maybe she's not listening. Well, I have to tell all of you that the process that I talked about for the council is a common process. So John, Mike, and Alex, if you would be prepared to come to a meeting in September, which will discuss all of this in detail. I'm going to urge the full council to watch this PowerPoint presentation. When the mayor puts forward the entire bonding request, I would ask that you give us any detail at that time. It would be more efficient for me to have the council listen to this entire process through watching the meeting, but I know that they're going to have questions. So that's the process we have.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
I'm a little confused. So the finance committee has their number and they have a bonding request.
The finance committee does not have a bonding request that came through the full council. You can't send any request.
Because I thought I was to give the number to this as per directed. So right now, this committee, this chair of the finance committee and the president of the city council have a bonding request as well as a presentation. How does this get back to city council?
You put in a request like you do for an appropriation to the packet for August 4th.
That is a misunderstanding, unfortunately. All requests for appropriations and bonding have to go to the full council to be sent to committee. We can't, and if we suggested, or if I suggested that all you had to do was give us a number and we, the finance committee, could approve it, that was completely in error. And I don't believe I did that, but I could understand how you might have felt that way. I can't authorize the finance committee to approve a bonding request, which the full council has no idea about.
And then the finance committee, it's referred, so these technically aren't readings because of process issues. The first reading would be August 7th. And where would be the finance committee that we repeat this meeting? When would that be?
I'd have to look at the calendar. Do you have the calendar in front of you?
Yep, it could be the 11th, the 18th, the 25th. Those are all Wednesdays, or some other day. It works.
Because that
11th
would,
or 18th is whatever is convenient. The other thing about this is we don't know if there's other financial things coming to us. We'll deal with those as well. But I will set a public hearing for this for the first meeting in September. If the full council votes on it or approves it at the first meeting in September, it's done.
so it doesn't have to come back to finance?
You misunderstand. The first meeting in August, it comes to the full council. It's sent to finance.
Right.
The finance committee meets the 11th or the 18th.
Yes.
We approve it. We recommend it to the full council. The full council debates it at the first meeting in September, and it's voted on. So that certainly seems to meet the timeline that you presented for a contract to be negotiated and dealt with after that.
Okay, I want to be clear with the three Honeywell, the team on Honeywell, because I'm assuming you would want them at the next finance committee meeting as well as the September 7th, but there's no need for them to be at August 7th.
Just to clarify, Mayor, the August meeting is August 4th, and the September meeting is September 1st.
There we go. Okay. So I guess my question is there a reason for Honeywell to be there in the August meeting?
No, but there is a reason for Honeywell to be there at the September meeting. Can we set that, councilors? Why don't we debate that right now? I have no problem with the 11th. Well, my wife might. That's my 49th anniversary. So let's try the 18th. Can we meet?
Well, do we? Yeah.
There's no finance meeting between the August and September meeting?
Yes, the 18th of August.
Okay.
That's what we're setting now.
Honeywell needs to be at that finance meeting. That's what I'm
just about to say that. Can you guys meet on the August 18th meeting? I'm asking you. If that's inconvenient, we'll do the 11th. But the 18th would be preferred by me. It's a personal request. I don't know. How about you, Omar and Peg? The 18th of August.
Yeah, I have no other plans. Omar, you're shaking your head.
Yes, because I think Sydney's coming from Puerto Rico the 18th, but I have to pick it up. But I can.
We can do another day besides Wednesday, can't we?
Yeah, we can do any date you want, Omar.
19 will be good for me. Or the 17th.
I can't.
Whatever.
The CPA is meeting on the 19th.
How about the 17th, which is a Tuesday?
I can do that.
It worked for me.
How does the 17th sound for Honeywell?
That's great.
Jen? No problem. Shake your head. We will next meet August 17th as a finance committee.
5 p.m.?
Yes.
Could I have a
It will still be Zoom. The council is debating on whether to continue with Zoom at the next meeting, and probably in September we may be back in session. But just to review, this comes to the full council as a bonding request. It'll be presented at the August, what date was that? The 4th meeting, August 4th. It'll be a first reading and be sent to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee will meet on August 17th. 17th at 5 p.m. through Zoom, and which will invite the full council. This will be the first topic on the agenda, and if there's other financial matters, we'll deal with them at that time too. I will set a public hearing on August 4th for the September 1st meeting. The public hearing for the bonding and a final vote will take place on that meeting. Mayor.
On the June 16th meeting, City Council was given a packet with an estimate of expenditure of $6.9 million to be discussed at the Finance. I do not want it on public record that there is some part of this process from my office that's not transparent.
No one's suggesting that.
You have a number, you got, so I basically want to say, in June, you got a number with a detailed packet. And in this meeting, you have a breakdown of the cost as referred to the Finance Committee with a bonding request sitting in your inbox to take a look at that goes to City Council. That's all I want to say. I totally respect your process, but I followed process.
I don't remember the bonding request on June 16th. It normally comes like an
Gave you a
appropriation.
price.
I'll have to look at that.
And you asked for a bonding request for this meeting. I hope it is reflected in City Council minutes. We certainly can go back and look at the tape.
Surely. Okay. I have nothing else. Do you have anything else, Peg?
No.
Councilor Gomez?
Oh, I have the agenda from June 16. I couldn't see the numbers, but.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll take a request for adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn. Councilor Connors?
Aye.
Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. We'll see this group on August 17th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Take care. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
You bet.